Okay, so this is our team. We are a team of 11 teacher educators based at Northumbria University. And this includes colleagues who are permanent members of university staff, as well as colleagues from professional practice who spend the bulk of their time in school. So, kind of a collaborative team in that way. Um, we did not work together for quite as long as Catherine, but we had been working together for about 5 years, I think, before we submitted our claim. So just to kind of give you a bit of a sense of our evolution, I suppose, and the way that our team grew over time. We came together really at first because of challenges that we experienced during COVID lockdowns. Our team is because we're working in a teacher education context. We're all long-standing educators, so some of us have kind of been teaching for decades in kind of primary education context as well as in university context as well. And so we have a real shared love for teaching and for that kind of interaction that we have with students. But then when we moved to online teaching, obviously everything changed and kind of all of our tried and tested kind of approaches went a bit out of the window. And so we kind of came together to provide peer support, I suppose, really. And of course, we recognize the value of making space for those conversations. And so we continued on and kind of used that as a bit of a prompt just for innovation to better meet the needs of our students, and particularly to kind of meet the challenges of preparing future teachers for professional practice. There is a very well documented and publicised recruitment and retention crisis in in teaching, and so we were trying to better prepare our students to face the realities of teacher recruitment and the working in schools, because obviously there's kind of research that suggests that if students feel better prepared, then actually they're less likely to leave the teaching profession. And currently 40% leave within the first 5 years. And as you kind of said, Andy, we were awarded our CATE this year. Um, Something else that would kind of brought us together as a team is a desire to undertake pedagogic research. Northumbria is going through a period of change, and from predominantly being kind of teaching and learning kind of focused in our team. There's now an increased requirement to be research active as well. So a lot of our kind of colleagues have just undertaken and completed PhD study, and a lot of us self-identify as kind of early career researchers. So our collaboration kind of gave us an opportunity to kind of engage in research and kind of engage in peer support and kind of collaborative writing and kind of that conference presentations and other research outputs, with that kind of valuable support from others, but in a context that we do feel really familiar with, which is obviously our teaching, and at the same time to do the thing that we came to university to do, which is to make a difference to our students' learning. So really, we were kind of motivated by that idea of kind of killing two birds, I suppose, with one stone. The thread that ran throughout our application was around simulation. So, in addition to kind of our innovations about online learning during COVID, we then kind of talked a bit. I think this links to your idea of the kind of project, but our project was about simulation and education, and this is used really widely in health and in high risk industries. But actually, simulation as a kind of pedagogic model is not well used in teacher education contexts. And so this kind of gave us a bit of an opportunity to kind of showcase our innovation. So we talked about this and the impact that this had on our student engagement, and also this gave us an opportunity to talk about some of the impact and kind of reach of our work. We were recognised by Ofsted, for example, during a recent kind of inspection, and so we were able to kind of draw upon some of the evidence from that to support our claim. We also talked a lot about how we worked with students to design our simulation. So we worked with student partners to kind of inform our kind of development of the kind of simulation as a pedagogic model. So we talked to them, for example, about the combination of different materials that they would find useful, the length of sessions, the focus, what actually were the kind of elements of teaching, the role of teacher that they found most difficult, what didn't they experience on placement. And actually we worked with them to co-design some sessions. We even had one project where our students designed a simulation and delivered it to us. And so that kind of role reversal where they were the kind of leaders of sessions and we were the students. So all kind of feeding into learning about each other's perspectives and kind of from each other in order to then better meet the needs of our students in our own delivery. In terms of what our application included, when we looked at the criterion one, which is obviously about the excellence in the team's collaborative approach, we talked about our shared vision and values. So that included our beliefs as educators, our kind of long-standing kind of networks with professional practice, and obviously our deliberate incorporation to have team members both from permanent university staff members as well as colleagues from professional practice. And then also our commitment to collaboration with student partners and what our key principles that underpin those partnerships were. We talked about our collaborative approach to innovation and problem solving, and we talked about how we adopted an action research approach for that. And we talked about the four stages within that cycle, so the plan, act, observe, and reflect, and what those looked like, with obviously examples of different ways that we'd enacted those throughout our different projects. We also spent time talking about how we communicate as a team. Through things like team sites and shared files, but also things like away days, how we try and establish our kind of norms of communication to kind of ensure honesty and kind of that peer support, and about things like building in opportunities for social interactions, shared lunches and kind of coffee breaks whenever we're having our away days, which sound like really kind of minor things, but actually all kind of built I suppose, a sense of the ethos of our team and the way in which we kind of work together. And then we also included our methods by which we kind of continually reflect on our ways of working. So that included kind of teaching mechanisms like module feedback and NSS outcomes, but also, reflections on our team itself. So kind of team member reflective logs that we kind of did at different points in teaching, observations where we kind of observed each other's teaching and gave feedback, and also just our kind of informal discussions and interactions between ourselves where we talked about what was working and what wasn't, and how we could then perhaps improve things moving forwards. For criterion two, which was about the impact of our collaborative working, we organised our kind of claim, I suppose, geographically. So we talked first about the impacts that we'd had on our institution. So we talked about internal recognition, linking to obviously some of the comments before from the session. So we have had internal awards. So Northumbria has an internal collaborative teaching award, which has the same criteria as CATE does. And so we talked about our preparations for that. We talked about individual awards and student-led teaching awards, NSS and module outcomes. And we also talked about things like mentoring and supporting others. We have a postgraduate certificate of academic practice for all new academics into Northumbria. And so we talked about that and kind of the contributions that we'd made to developing that. We talked about our regional kind of work, including reach and impact for professional development for teachers and things like multi-academy trusts and other educational organisations across the North East. And then we also talked about our national work, so kind of advising national organisations, providing guidance and exemplification, feeding into statutory training frameworks and kind of so on. And then our international work is still quite early, but we talked about how we engaged with pedagogic research and kind of our dissemination of that. We talked about things like download figures and kind of so on. Our work had featured in a podcast, for example. And then also we gave accounts of our collaborations with international partners, including through Erasmus. We did find that tracking our impact was one of the most challenging aspects of our claim. Exactly as kind of Catherine said earlier, we needed to kind of make plans to gather feedback where we had gaps. So we used things like student voice kind of information from focus groups and surveys. We obviously had our fabulous student partner team who were able to share reflections that we could use for testimonials. We had information from our peer observations, from our staff reflections, and then also from things like Ofsted, from conference presentations, and wider testimonials. We had quantitative data from download figures for our publications, engagement with our professional journals, with blogs and podcasts, and then also to kind of increase our reach, particularly at a kind of national level. We also strategically planned activities to increase our kind of reach and also to help us evidence our impact. So we established a national simulation network, which currently has about 40 members from uh, about 30 institutions across the UK. So we were kind of able to better demonstrate that reach, and obviously, of course, to enhance the reach of our work through kind of developing those collaborative networks and learning from each other, and also by seeking out external partners through engaging in conferences, and also through just proactively kind of looking to find like-minded individuals. Um, and then the process that we went through applying for our CATE, as I said, we kind of applied for an institutional award first, which helped us to know whether we were on the right track and whether we met the criteria that CATE also uses. We had team writing retreats to pool ideas. Our application definitely took longer than Catherine's kind of couple of days over a weekend, but pooling ideas and kind of collaborating towards drafting different sections. And then we did delegate. We had a team of 3 of us who drafted for consistency of tone. And we also had a graphics expert to make our graphics look much more professional than mine would have been. And then we were also very lucky to have support from our mentor within our institution, and also feedback from a number of reviewers. We nearly pulled our application at the last minute because we didn't think it was going to be good enough, but we did kind of have that mindset that Andy's mentioned about just kind of giving this a go, and being ready to accept feedback. And actually, we were successful. So, and we were pleased that we had stuck with this and submitted the claim in the end. And that's me.